Hello and welcome to Photoshop for Presentations. This is your instructor Dan Hood, and this is Unit 4, where we are going to talk more in depth about using Photoshop in particular for PowerPoint presentations. As you know, PowerPoint is a presentation product that is made by Microsoft and is probably the foremost presentation software out there. I would say, most people use PowerPoint. So anyway, with that being said, we're going to start this particular lesson by showing you how to create backgrounds for your PowerPoint presentations. As you know, that when you use PowerPoint, that there are a lot of built-in pre-made backgrounds that you can use. But as you also know, that because they're pre-made preset backgrounds, that they're seen by a lot of people on the same presentations, and frankly they get a little boring. So to jazz up your presentations or to brand them to your particular business or brand, you can make your own personalized backgrounds for PowerPoint, and this is what we're going to show today. As you can see on the screen, this is a PowerPoint background that I've already created. And what we're going to do is that I'm going to show you, we're going to recreate this background. And the reason I chose this particular layout is because it uses a little bit of an assortment of tools for PowerPoint, for Photoshop, and we are going to go through each of the tools and the different techniques to create this background. So anyway, we'll close this one out, and we're going to start on a new one. So the first thing you do, as you can see I'm in Photoshop here, the first thing we're going to do is that we're going to go to File, New, and we're going to create a new document. Okay, so the new document dialog box comes up, and we can either do it two ways. There is the custom size that you want to make for your PowerPoint presentation background is, as you can see here, 1024 pixels. And by the way, let's make sure that when you're creating this document that you're using pixels and not inches or any of these other, but make sure and put it on pixels. So the size dimensions that we want to use is 1024 by 768 at 72 dpi with the RGB color mode. By setting them to that, and also the background contents should be transparent. By setting them to these settings, this will give you the correct dimensions for your PowerPoint background. So you can either put these in manually, like so, or actually you can come up here to the presets, and if you go to the web preset, you will see that there's a number of presets under the web preset, and 1024 768 is one of those presets. So you can go about that either way. So anyway, we have our document size ready, so let's go ahead and press OK, and we have our document ready. Let's see, the first thing we need to do, let's go to Windows and open the layers box so we can see all of our different layers, and we'll put it right there. Okay, so the first thing we'll want to do is let's go back to our original document, and as you can see here we have a number of things going on. We have this ghosted out background of the Grand Canyon area that I have been using as one of my working files. Then you have this dark blue area up here, this kind of dark orange area down here, a logo, and some text. So that's the different elements that we're going to put into this document. So the first thing that I like to do is that I like to work from the back and then move to the front. So as you can see, my back or background is this big area here, and then things in the foreground next would be this blue area, this dark orange area. Then the next level would be your logo and your text. So the first thing we're going to do here is that we're going to import in this background image. So let's go back to our document, and to import in that image you go to File, Place, and that is how you import other images into your Photoshop document. And let's find this particular image, and I believe that's called background JPEG. Nope, I'm wrong. It's actually, there it is, it's Desert Large JPEG, and there it is. So as you can see, that is, especially this area, you'll notice is that ghosted image. So once it's placed, you double click on it and it places itself into your document. And as you can see, this is our first layer, Desert Large. Okay, so we have placed that in there, and for now we're going to leave that alone because we're going to create or place our other elements, and then we will manipulate each layer to the particular effect that we want to get from each layer. So the next thing we'll do, now since we have our background, our bottom layer, the next thing we'll want to do is that we'll want to create or import the dark blue bar at the top and the dark orange bar at the bottom. So let's start with the dark blue bar at the top. If you look really closely, and it may not show up very well in the video, but if you look really closely, what this actually is it's the dark sky of this photograph here. See how this is kind of dark and blue? Well, what I did basically is that I took the blue area here and used this as a design element of the PowerPoint slide. And the way I achieved that is basically what I did is that I took, by using the selection tool, I selected an area at the top, made a copy of it, and copied it onto a separate layer, and then manipulated it a little bit to make it even darker. So I'll show you how you go about doing that. Okay, so now here we are back on our document that we're creating. And as you can see, here's our layer, Desert Large. So to create that dark bar at the top, what you do next is that you would grab your selection tool here. This is the rectangle selection tool. You'll come over here. You'll start up at the upper left, hold down your mouse, and stretch your selection tool over to the far right, and grab a pretty good, a large area of the top dark clouded area. So you grab it, and as you can see, the marching ants are there, or the selection area. And so what this is telling me is that this area within the dotted line is the area, or the pixels that I have selected. So now that that's selected, let's go up to Edit, and we'll copy. You can either do it that way, copy, which is Command C, or it would be Control C on a Windows machine. So anyway, I'm going to go Command C, copy. And that now has copied all of the pixels within my selection. Now let's go ahead and we will go to Select, Deselect, or Command D or Control D on Windows. and that has deselected our selection. So now it is gone. We come down here, let's start a new layer because we want to put this selected area onto a new layer so we can have better control over it. So let's say create new layer, and as you can see it comes up as simply being layer 1. First thing, as I think that I mentioned in earlier lessons, is that it's always a good practice to name your layers. So let's double click the name there, and we will call this top bar. So now it has a name. Now that we have named it, let's go ahead and select it, make sure that that is highlighted, and now we go to paste, and this will paste that selection into a new layer. And there it is. Now as you can see, this layer is above our desert large layer, and as you can see on the document that that is indeed true. So now the next thing we'll need to do is that we need to place this into the proper position, which is at the top. So the way we'll achieve that is to grab the move tool right there, come over to your element here, and simply start moving it up. Now one thing that I would like to point out here is that as you can see I can move it around any way I wish. But now the only problem is that it started off here, but let's say that if I start moving it and I start getting off and I want to go straight up with it, but I don't have a lot of control over it. Well, actually you do, because if I were to hold down, if all of a sudden I press the shift key, as you can see it is kind of locked in to an area. It locks in to either a straight vertical movement, or if I come back over here, let's get that lined up again. I press my shift key and the move tool, and I can move it straight up, and it kind of keeps it locked in on a horizontal trajectory, and so I can, a vertical trajectory, and I can move it straight up and kind of lock it into place. Okay, now as you can see, I moved it up to the top and it almost looks like that it blended back in because it is exactly the same pixels that are below it. If I click off Desert Large, you can now plainly see that we have our bar where we want it to be. Okay, now let's go back and look at the already created one. And this is what it looks like. So now we have our bar pretty much where we want it, just like that. So we're good there. Okay, for the sake of being able to see what we're doing, I'm going to take this desert large layer and I'm just going to keep that off for right now so I can work on my document area more effectively without being distracted by this large photo. Okay, so now we have our top bar, our background, which we will manipulate later to make it more ghosted. So the next thing we want to do is that we want to create this bottom dark orange area. Now, the way we're going to do that is that since we're not going to be copying any pixels or anything like that, this time what we're going to do is that we're going to actually create a box, or in this case a rectangle, with that particular color in it. But now I guess the question is, or you're probably wondering, like, well, how do we create that color? Either of two ways. You can go to your color window, which will open that up. Oh, but it opens up small. Let's open that completely. And you can create your color here, by clicking around and choosing a different color. But if you do it that way, there's a decent chance that you'll come up with a color that just really doesn't complement the photos or other colors that you're using in your layout. So let's use a little trick to create a color that I know that will work really great. And the way that you do that is that let's go back to our desert large image here, and what we're going to do is that we're actually going to pick a color out of this photo to use as that bottom dark orange bar. And the way you do that is by using your the eyedropper tool here, and as you can see it's right here. So click that, take your eyedropper tool, and you can use this anywhere. As you can see, if I come up to the dark clouds, notice how it makes this color right there, which is a color that it is picked. Imagine the eyedropper tool is just what it is intended to be, is that it's like soaking up the color of a particular area in your photograph. So like in this case, if I click it there, it is soaking up that blue of this area right here. Now if I were to come down here, I click it, and as you can see right here and right here, that it is now the light blue of this area of the sky. So what we're going to do is that we're going to come down here, and let's look at this area right here. Let's zoom in on that just for a second. And as you can see, it's kind of that dark orange color that we're looking for. So what we're going to do is that we're going to use the eyedropper tool, and we're going to quote-unquote soak up some of that dark orange area. And as you can see, whoops, that's not what I meant to do. There we go. As you can see, it is that dark orange area that we're looking for. So, and as you can see, it's also brought that same color swatch down to our foreground color down here. So let's go ahead, and this is the color we're going to use. But now, what we're going to have to do next is that we're going to have to we're going to have to create a rectangle at the bottom of our image in that color. So let me zoom out here for a second so we can bring everything into our view area so you can get a better idea of what I'm doing. So then the next thing we're going to do is that we're going to, here is your rectangle tool. That is what we're going to use to create that rectangle. So you click your rectangle tool, you go to the bottom of your image area, and you just start doing the same thing, very similar to the selection tool, that you just start drawing a rectangle. Let's say we go up about this far for our rectangle. I think that'll be plenty, and voila, it has created a rectangle in that dark color. Over here it has created a shape layer, and as you can see here, it's called shape 1. Now the thing that it's done is that it's actually what it has done, it has created a shape layer mask, as you can see here, that includes this color, and that's how you create your colored shapes. Now let's go ahead and we'll name this. We'll call this orange. Let's call it bottom bar, and this will be our bottom bar. So now we have that named. Now let's go ahead and we'll go back to our move tool, and as you can see now, we have the nice bottom bar, and we have our top bar, and we still have our background. So okay, now we have a top bar, a bottom bar, our background. Now if I remember right, that the next thing we need to do is that we need to go ahead and we will create this, or not create, we'll import this logo in. And if you're doing something like this for your business or for your organization, you know, more than likely you'll already have a logo in place. If not, you'll have to create a logo, but unfortunately that's a different class. It's actually a class all in itself of how to create logos and stuff like that. That would be another time, another place. But anyway, so let's assume that you do have your logo already created. What we're going to do now is that we're going to import or bring in a logo, another graphic element for this layout, for this PowerPoint background. The way you go about doing that is that you go up to File, Place, and now we'll find our logo. Usually your logos, this is the logo that I have here called Cowboy Inc. You'll either find it in a couple of different variations. It might be an AI file, as it is here, which is Adobe Illustrator, or I also have the same logo in a Photoshop document, a PSD. And as you can see, it's right there, Cowboy Inc. And it's like a sheriff star with the words Cowboy Inc. in it. So I have my logo, which I found on my computer, and I'm going to click Place. Now what that has done, as you can see, it is imported in that graphic element, the Photoshop document, into this new Photoshop document, and it has created its own layer for this particular element. And then as you can see right there, it is called Cowboys Inc. We don't have, since it's already named, we're not going to change the name of it. The next thing we'll do is that with our Move tool, actually by using the Move tool, it is going to ask you, do you wish to place this file into your new Photoshop document? So we're going to go ahead and click Place, and therefore it is now placed inside our document. With our Move tool, let's take that and we're going to move it to the upper left hand corner. Now, as you can see right now, it's kind of small, especially compared to our already pre-made document here that we're trying to recreate. So what we're going to do is that we're going to go back here to the layer that is that graphic element, Cowboys Inc., and we're going to use the Transform tool to scale or to enlarge this particular element. So you will go under Edit, Transform, Scale, and as you can see, it has brought up a box around it with your anchors. So in this case, go ahead and grab the lower right hand anchor, and here's another little trick. Remember how we were using the Shift key earlier to control objects moving on a direct, horizontal, or vertical? Well, in this case, if you hold down the Shift key and drag on the right hand or any of your anchors, what it does is it enlarges your particular element here. As you can see, it gets larger and larger. But what it's doing by holding down the Shift key is that it's keeping it in a certain perspective, as in it keeps it constrained within a square shape. Now what I'll show you is that what happens if you don't hold down the Shift key. When you don't hold down the Shift key, you can move it and enlarge it, stretch it down. But the only problem is if I do it that way, then I'm going to get some image that is completely distorted. So I do not want that to happen. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to undo that. And let's start again. We'll go back and we'll transform, which is under Edit, Transform, Scale. Okay, so here we are again. Hold down the Shift key and let's go ahead and enlarge that to about there, I would say. Maybe a little bit larger, but not much more. Okay, that looks good. Once I'm finished with that, I can go back to my Move tool. It'll ask me, do I wish to place this file in its current form? Place. And now we have it enlarged. enlarged. Okay, now it's not exactly in the spot that we want. We want it up a little higher. So let's go back to our move tool. We'll move that up a little bit. Pretty much where we want. Maybe let's, no, actually it looks pretty good. We'll move it over just a little bit. We'll move it down like that. It's not going to look exactly like our other one, but it's close. Close enough. Okay, now the next thing we want to do, if you'll notice, another thing that we have going on here is that, as you can see, there's a little bit of a shadow on this. So we're going to go back to this one. As you can see, there isn't a shadow here. So we are going to achieve that shadow, we're going to go to Layer, Layer Style, and use one of these blending options. The one we're going to use is Drop Shadow. That brings up the Layer Style dialog. And actually we're not going to play with any of these settings, because actually the settings all look pretty good. I like the angle of it. As you can see, you can change the angle, but I like the angle pretty well. And let's just take a look at it. So that's with the drop shadow, that's without the drop shadow, with, without. So as you can see, it really does make a difference. We're going to press OK, and there now we have a drop shadow on our logo. And as you can see, you can tell that because it says Effects Drop Shadow right there, and it has the little FX marquee. Okay, so now let's go ahead and let's zoom out to our full document size. And the last thing we'll do is, as far as creating our elements, is that let's go ahead and let's create this text. Alright, and the text here, as you can see, says cattle driving capabilities, because you know these cowboys are in business and they're presenting to their clients of their cattle driving capabilities so they can score some more business. So let's go back to our document and let's get the text tool down here. Click over here, and as you see, once I click with the text tool inside our area, our work area, it automatically makes a new layer for the text. And this is, now let's go ahead and let's type in what we're looking for. Oh, wait, actually before we do that, as you can see here, our color, our foreground color is still that orange, but we want to change that to white. So, because that is the color we want to use for our text, is white. White on the orange. So to get to white, let's go ahead and double click that. As you can see, our marker shows that we're still in the dark orange. To change that to white, go ahead and go all the way to the upper left hand corner, click that, and as you see, our new color here is white. So now we have the correct color we need. Let's go back to our text tool. As you can see, the cursor is still blinking here, ready for us to start typing. So click it, and we're going to call this, let's see, cattle driving capabilities. Okay, and let's just make sure that this is in a font that we're looking for, that we want. So highlight it by double clicking on it, and here's our, this shows our fonts up here. And in this case, the font we're going to use is Clarendon. This is where you would choose your font. I'm going to use this font called Clarendon. Heavy, 30 point, and that's just what we're looking for. So let's go ahead and take that, As you can see that now, as I've typed in, this layer over here is now called the the text that I have typed in, cattle driving capabilities. So now let's go to our move tool and let's move that into place over here, like so. That looks pretty good. Okay, so now the last thing that we want to do, this is kind of forgot, but we can go back. That's the beauty of having layers, that you can always go back to any of your layers, select it, and add more special effects to it, edit it, whatever you need to do. The one thing I'd like to point out is that, as you can see here, there is a bit of a texture on this bottom layer here, on the orange bar. We're going to go ahead and we're going to achieve that layer on our new document. To do that, let's zoom in a little bit, and here it is. Let's go ahead and click on our bar over here. Now, to apply a texture or any kind of effect to this layer, right now, since it is a mask, a colored mask, we need to render that into a basic object. And what I'm really saying is that we need to rasterize it. And that means basically we're going to change it. Right now it is in a vector state to create this shape. We want to vectorize it to make it into a raster image. The way you do that is you go up to your little arrow here, and I'm sorry, actually you don't do it that way. You right click on it, and right here it says rasterized layer. Now it's rastered, and now it's just a simple shape like anything else. Once you have it rasterized, let's go to filter, and we're going to use one of these filters onto our rasterized orange bar. And I believe I got that I achieved that by going to texture and going to, I think it's this one, calcular. This opens up a dialog box with these different types of textures. And yes, this is indeed the texture that I was using. And as you can see, it is doing exactly what I want it to do. It's creating that same texture. So let's go ahead and use that texture, press OK, and now it applies it to our bar here. So let's go ahead and we'll zoom back out. Now that I've achieved the same texture as the one we're trying to recreate, and now they look pretty much the same except for one thing. The one thing that we're missing here is, let's turn back on our background layer called Desert Image, and as you can see, it is still a dark image that we want to ghost. Now that's very simple to achieve. All you have to do is go to your Desert Large layer, and we're simply going to lower its opacity. By lowering the opacity, as you can see, it goes down and down and down in opacity. The only problem we're having right now is because there isn't any white to give you a good idea of what you're looking at. It's hard to see exactly how opaque this is, and if this is what we really want to achieve. So let's do one thing before we mess with the opacity. Let's go ahead and we're going to add one more layer. This is a layer that's called a fill layer. And basically what this is this is simply a layer that is just filled with a solid color. In this case, we're going to do a solid color layer, new fill layer, solid color, and we want to use the color of white. And this is exactly what it did. So we have a solid layer of white. Press OK. It puts it at the top. We want to put it at the very, very back. So let's take that and let's move it down to the very back. You can't see it right now because everything else above it is still completely opaque. So now we're going to go back to our Desert Large layer and we're going to drop the opacity on that till we get it to a place that we think would be effective for putting text. You know, like now this is the area that you're going to use for your presentations. This is where you're going to put your graphs and your text in your PowerPoint presentation. So you really want to lower the opacity quite a bit so the background is strictly just a ghosted background and doesn't compete with what you're trying to present. So, you know, I think like 20%, maybe even a little bit lower, maybe 15% might be good. So let's go right in the middle and go 17% opacity. Okay, so now that looks pretty good because now we have a big area that is light, so you can put lots of text in there for your presentation. We have a nice blue area up here that kind of frames in your middle area. Same with the bottom. This does a nice job of framing in the bottom and gives you an area to put your message here. And then you have your logo up here. So this is a really nice basic presentation background that you could use. The same idea, you know, placing a logo up here, having a bar up here to frame in everything to the middle with a ghosted background, very simple ghosted background, just enough to give some interest but not to overpower your presentation, because the real message of your presentation is the text and your bar graphs and stuff like that. Same thing here, you have a bar at the bottom that frames in everything, and you have a simple message here that drives home your overall message. So anyway, that is a basic way to create backgrounds for your presentations. Now the last thing you want to do, now that you have this in a layered Photoshop document, the one thing you'll want to do is that as of right now it's unsaved, which I should have saved it as something a long time ago, because it's always a good idea to save and save often, just in case if your computer crashes or the power goes out or something like that, you don't lose a bunch of work. So let's go ahead and we'll save this. And we'll save this, we'll just call this PowerPoint. Oops, if I can type correctly, PowerPoint. PowerPoint PSD. We're going to go ahead and save that. Okay, so now we have it in a saved state. But the thing is, though, is that PowerPoint will only accept a certain type of format to import into PowerPoint. So we have to save this into a format that PowerPoint will read. The best format, in my opinion, to save for PowerPoint is JPEG. So now let's go to File, and we'll go to Save for Web or Devices. In this case, we're going to be showing this on the web or on a TV, so this will be appropriate to use this. So let's go ahead and we'll use a preset here of JPEG High. This will give us plenty of optimization for our background to place into PowerPoint, but keeping the file size small. As you can see, our original PowerPoint here is almost 3 megabytes. But after it's optimized into a JPEG, it's lowered by a lot, 64.69 kilobytes. So now let's go ahead and we have this at a place we think is great. It's at the correct image size, and it is ready to save. So let's go ahead and save. It's going to ask you where to save your JPEG. We're going to save it in the exact same spot. Press save, and voila, it has just exported it out as a JPEG at a much lower size, file size, and now you can take that into PowerPoint. In one other lesson, I'm going to show you how to take all of your different pieces that you've created with Photoshop and how to put them into PowerPoint. So like I'm going to show you how to take your background and put them into PowerPoint, your different impact graphics, or your background graphics. Alright, I hope this was I hope I was successful in showing you how to create a background. If you have any questions on any of the steps that it took to get to this point, or if you have any questions that have to do with PowerPoint or Photoshop, please let me know and we will discuss it within the discussion section of this lesson. Alright, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you next time.